Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
Got an interesting story here about somebody whose voice you've heard. Longtime spokesperson Tom Bodett sues Motel 6. Fox 32 Chicago ran the story, but it's widely reported. Austin Williams wrote this version. Tom Bodett, of course, is the guy who says, we'll leave the light on for you. And that, of course, made him the voice of Motel 6 for nearly 4 decades. He's now suing them and their parent company because he says that they're still using his name and voice, but they've stopped paying him. According to the lawsuit filed in Manhattan, he said he ended his relationship with them after his new owner failed to make a $1.2 million annual payment to him in January. Now, interestingly, their contract was set to expire in November. So here's the story. He says that they're still using his voice and name on its national reservation phone line. The lawsuit alleges violations of both contract rights and federal trademark law. He said he attempted to reach a confidential settlement that would honor his legacy and protect their reputation and franchisees, but he accused the company of responding with misrepresentations, obfuscations, and delay tactics. The lawsuit seeks $1.2 million in owed compensation, along with additional damages and a share of profits. Now, a spokesperson for the parent company of Motel 6 said the company was surprised by the lawsuit, but indicated they're hoping for an amicable resolution. They said, we appreciate Mr. Bodett's contributions over the past years. Of course, we will continue to advertise keeping the lights on for you. Now, they did contact Bodett, Reuters did, and he said the complaint says all there is to say. So Tom Bodett became Motel 6's lead spokesperson back in 1986, and he says he coined the phrase, we'll leave the light on for you, during an unscripted ad lib. His voice became synonymous with the brand's down-to-earth identity and was featured in both radio and TV campaigns for decades. In addition to his advertising work, he's known for his appearances on NPR, and also he's narrated some things for Ken Burns, the famous documentarian. So the lawsuit was filed in the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of New York. It could set a notable precedent for voice usage and contract rights and long-term brand relationships, especially as companies change ownership. Now, as an attorney, when I hear of a case, they often remind me of previous cases I know about. One is a legal case, one is just a funny story. But back in 1988, Bette Midler was approached by Ford Motor Company, or actually by an advertising agency creating an ad campaign for Ford. And they said, would you like to sing a song in one of these Ford ads? And she apparently said no. She said no. And they said, well, we'd really like to have her sing this. How about this? And they hired one of her former backup singers and said, can you sing like Bette Midler to where you sound like her? And apparently she said, yes, I can. And so they then cut a commercial that sounded like Bette Midler, but it wasn't Bette Midler. And she sued them. And at the trial court level, the court said, you can't sue somebody just because they sound like you. But her argument was, it's not just that the singer sounds like me, it's that they were deliberately imitating me to the point where if people hear that commercial, they're going to think it's me, but it's not. And I said I didn't want to do these ads for a reason. And whatever that reason might be, her reasons are her reasons. And the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals spun it around and said, yes, she can sue for that because it's not just a sound-alike, it's an imitation. And that was the key there. And that case happened back in 1988. And for those of you who think I make this stuff up, just Google the phrase Midler versus Ford and type in 1988. That might help you. So interestingly, Tom Bodett would even have an argument here if they brought in somebody who sounded like him, presumably. But more interesting is the notion that they are simply still using his actual voice. So if you call the reservation line, apparently his voice is the one you hear. And if they stop paying him, then presumably they should stop using his stuff. But again, if he has a contract through November, well, you got to pay the contract through November. So that's that. But I know a lot of people in my audience, I worked in radio, and a lot of people know that. And so I follow a lot of things that happen in radio. And there's a really funny story on point here that happened on the Howard Stern show back in 1986. And there's this little group called the Rolling Stones. And they've been around for a while. the Rolling Stones. And they had not recorded music for a little while. And then they made a big brouhaha about how they're going to release some new music. And the first single they're going to release was going to be a remake of a song called The Harlem Shuffle. And Howard Stern's got on his show this sonic genius named Fred Norris. Fred Norris is an absolute genius. He doesn't speak a lot on the show, but he does a lot of the sound effects. But he's also a musician. And so Fred Norris went into his studio and recorded a song as he imagined the Rolling Stones would if they were recording the Harlem Shuffle, which they did. They had recorded it, but it had not been released yet. So Fred Norris channels the Rolling Stones and records the Harlem Shuffle. He brings it into Howard the next morning and goes, Howard, I got my version of the Stones version of the Harlem Shuffle. And Howard Stern, just to be funny, goes on the radio and says, hey, everybody, the new single from the Rolling Stones is here. We have an exclusive because it has not been released yet. It's going to be coming out in the next few days, but we got it before everybody else. Here you go, the Harlem Shuffle. And he plays the song, and the phones light up. And among the things lighting up their phones are, record companies and lawyers going, you can't play that yet. And they went along with the joke for a little while, and then finally they said, well, that's not the Rolling Stones. That's Fred Norris and company. And it's one of the funniest things that has ever happened on the radio. Because if you hear Fred Norris's version, which you can find on the internet, it sounds like the Rolling Stones version of Harlem Shuffle. And it's just the fact that the Rolling Stones have got such a distinctive style, and Fred Norris knows it so well, and the performance that he does, and guessing how they're going to, produce it, he was right. And there were actually apparently lawyers sending over cease and desists after being told by the record company, somebody must have leaked this to Howard Stern. Now, in their defense, Howard did say things that implied that he'd gotten an early copy of the song. When I was working in radio years and years and years ago, somehow the station got its hands on a song that was not going to be released until the following Monday, or the following week at least. And over the weekend, we were playing it. And when I came into the station, the DJ before me told me, but there was a big old note on the board. The note said, we're going to be playing this song every so often, but we anticipate that we might get served with some legal papers. And so if you get served legal papers, call this number, that's a station attorney, and ask for further guidance. And so I played the song a couple times, didn't get in trouble for it. I suspect that the radio station playing the song probably got them more publicity. And I don't recall if they ever got hit with a cease and desist. But that's an interesting one. But backing up to Midler versus Ford, because that to me is a weird one. Because there are people out there who've got such distinctive voices. So, Tom Waits, okay? Now, there's probably somebody out there who can imitate Tom Waits. I've seen guys and gals doing imitations, for instance, in Vegas. I saw an entire show once of all these people coming out and doing imitations, including a guy who looked like Charlie Daniels and sounded like Charlie Daniels, singing Charlie Daniels songs. And the interesting thing is there, they obviously say these are tributes. These are not the actual people. But I even thought that the Ninth Circuit was wrong to suggest that simply sounding like Bette Midler implies that no one's allowed to sound like her now. But they drew the distinction and said, well, no, it's not that simple. It's more that they actually had somebody who sounded like her imitating her, deliberately imitating her, so that it would mislead people into thinking that Bette Midler had endorsed Ford Motor Products. I still don't buy it. But I remember that because the case came out in 88, and we went to law school in 89. And I remember discussing that in one of our classes very, very early in my legal education. And so it's kind of stuck with me. So it's one of those things. But Tom Bodett suing Motel 6. We'll leave the light on for you. Sad end to that relationship. Austin Williams wrote that for Fox 32 Chicago. And that's the story. Questions or comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. Wherever you are, it's the place you need to be.